Hello and good football to all. I'm AJ, and with me is our special guest, the man known only as Dad. Welcome, Dad. On this podcast, we talk football and only football, so help us God. Welcome to Amen. Welcome to the bonus episode, Boston College Review / Bye Week. Dad, shall we football?
Shall we? Amen.
Amen. So, Notre Dame avoided the big letdown after the biggest win in recent memory, which I guess we're talking 93. There were a few other huge wins in recent memory outside of Florida State, but the setup was very similar, and Notre Dame came through.
It was scarily similar because the game started like we were trying to lose it, and just a rough start. And at least in 93, we waited till the final play of the game to determine the winner. And it certainly looked rough to get started. I think our defensive secondary was being picked apart by our former number 2 quarterback, Jurkovec. And, I think the other thing is the ball handling, or the lack thereof, laying 3 eggs very quickly on the turf was really, really scary. But I think it speaks volumes of the quality.
Yes, and real quick point, we lost all 3 fumbles.
Yes, we did.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's a pretty bad spots on the field. And I think that they went ahead and, kept their cool. They managed to get their feet back underneath them and started a pretty dominating performance after the first 20 minutes of the game. And I think that is a clear separation of prior, not only Kelly teams, but many teams in the past, in the recent past anyhow. So it was nice to see them to come back and really just take charge of the game. And wasn't a close it wasn't even as close as the score indicated, by the time the game was finished.
No, not really at all. This was done at halftime. It was 31-16 at halftime. Sibo Filibuster put one in the end zone shortly thereafter, beginning of the third quarter, with about 5 minutes and change left in the game to make it 38-16. They traded touchdowns after that, and the game wasn't in doubt from about halfway through the second quarter. Notre Dame went up 24-13 and then let Boston College on a 6-play, 57-yard drive. Took up about 2 minutes and 31 seconds. They kick a field goal, and from that point on, Notre Dame scored a touchdown, and they were in control. That was about 4 seconds left in the second half to Big Ben Skoranek. I don't know if you saw this, Dad. Big Ben, our Big Ben, little Big Ben, he got a shout out from Chad Ochocinco on the Twitters.
No,
for his play. He did. Chad Ochocinco reached out to him, called him a baller. That's got to be big for a 19, 20-year-old kid.
Yeah, sure is. He played
he earned it.
He had 5 catches, but 3 of them went to pay dirt, and that's a pretty good day when you finish up and you have 3 in the end zone. So he did his part to help the team get the W that they needed.
Here's something I want to highlight. Whole week, everyone's talking about Zay Flowers, which you might not know that name, but anyone in Chestnut Hill knows that name, and the 5 teams that Boston College has beaten know that name. He's the best skill position player on that football team by a pretty decent margin. He'll play on Sundays. 3 catches, 25 yards, and a touchdown, a long of 15. So Notre Dame may have given up 272, which isn't terrible. Jurkovec makes a lot of plays. He threw 40 balls, completed 18 of them, so he's under 50%. Only 6.8 yards per. with 2 touches. He threw a pick, 66.1 QBR. Basically, what I'm saying is a lot of those yards were accumulated on very risky plays. And this is how he did it at Notre Dame whenever he did play. And now they didn't have him out there in meaningful time when he was at Notre Dame, but he's a guy that moves around well. He trusts his playmaking ability, because along the trail, whenever Notre Dame was recruiting him, he committed. He was in the top 5 players in the country. And then they saw him at camps, right? They saw him at the Elite 11. I think he was at the Elite 11. They saw him at camps like that. And they realized that in the pocket, for one, and 2, on air or in a skeleton practice or in skeleton drills where it's just 7-on-7 or maybe even less, he didn't look so good. His game is on the field. And a guy whose game is best seen on the field is generally, who doesn't do so well in controlled settings, is generally a playmaker, and therein a risk taker. And that definitely showed. Took huge risks. And that brings me to the point that I told you I wanted to make before this. We need to stop dropping interceptions. First of all, above everything else is driving me crazy. Nick McLeod, Kyle Hamilton got his. And there was a garbage call on Bo Bauer, who barely scraped the face mask. Yeah. I mean, this stops well short of egregious, but yeah, it was a bad call.
Well, I think, talking about both quarterbacks, we got a chance to see 2 different players. You've got one that is ascending, and that's Ian Book. I think he's put 2 of his best games back to back. And, first off against Clemson, we talked about that last week, and he was sensational. He just took that same confidence that he developed in that game and brought it to this game. His eyes were downfield. He was comfortable in the pocket. He slid around as he needed to. And then, of course, he takes off 10 times for 85 yards. And there were some of the most beautiful timed runs needed after, we had made some faux pas by fumbling and putting ourselves behind. And Ian made some great plays to get us back. And then a very efficient 20 for 27, 283 yards and 3 touches. He just really, really did well. And before these last 2 games, I was certainly one thinking, did we keep did we lose a quarterback we wish we hadn't? And you saw that, Phil Jurkovec didn't get much playing time, and you heard some noise about his throwing motion and that kind of thing. When he was on, he threw a good football, but boy, when he was off, it wasn't close. And I think that was what they saw in practice that kept him from being any serious contender to take over for Book. And, he's got to learn the college level football game at the speed and the pace in which it's played with better athletes than he certainly had to deal with in high school. And so, he's getting his chance to shine. And obviously, he made a pretty scary outing against Clemson the week before we beat them. And so, he's capable of doing some really terrific things. He kept his feet very well. We pass rushed him a bit, and we've had more heat on in other games against other quarterbacks than we did this one. But, we still had some pressure on him, and, he kept his feet and kept making plays. I mean, there was that one play he spun out to the right after we had him just about dead to rights and throws it downfield, and we turns a 15-yard loss and about a 35-yard gain, and I could see he's got a lot of potential, but guiding this team we got the right man. We made the right choice in Ian Book.
Without question. And the other thing is, you talk about rumblings about his throwing motion and stuff. There was also broken relationships in there. Anyone that follows Notre Dame, that is on any sort of I'll call them gossip sites. I love them. Call them gossip sites, the recruiting sites, anything like that. You'd be well aware of the rumblings about Phil Jurkovec and Chip Long and Jeff Quinn and Brian Kelly. And for those of you who don't know, Chip Long, former OC, offensive coordinator. Jeff Quinn, the marvelous offensive line coach for Notre Dame. And Phil Jurkovec was just not going to stay at Notre Dame. It wasn't going to work there. Boston College is perfect for him. Boston College has no quarterbacks with his skill set. Matt Ryan doesn't have his skill set. Phil Jurkovec, his best physical comp is a guy like, I don't know, Josh Allen, probably. Now, between his ears, it's not really close yet. Maybe it will be, but it's not. I mean, that's what makes those guys, and Phil Jurkovec. And in terms of arm, yeah, Matt Ryan's still obviously greater than Jurkovec, but the physical skills, Matt Ryan will never move like Phil Jurkovec. Right. Boston College has never had a kid like this who also has the passing chops that Jurkovec does. So he's perfect there. They're going to let him make mistakes. They're going to let him, throw ill-advised passes, of which he will throw a ton, because you mentioned that Clemson game. One of those first touchdowns was an incomplete pass until it was batted into the air. And then it just happened to literally land in the lap of another Boston College wide receiver for a touchdown. Yeah. And that's what put them up with their greatest lead in that game. And then, everything regressed back to the mean. This team is not going to catch breaks for 3 quarters. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think one of the things that, you and I talked about, previously about this game was the hard running of Sebo Flemister. I mean, he really ran the ball aggressively and he almost looked like he sought out people to hit when he was running the football. But he took a lot of pounding and still made some very positive yards. Yeah, he got in the end zone twice, and that's obviously for him that's a big deal, and glad he was able to do it. But I was just really impressed because he's really with Chris Tyree and Williams taking over the majority of the running plays, and of course Book throwing in his 8 to 10 attempts. There hasn't been a lot of room for Sebo, and boy, when he got his chance, he was able to really shine, didn't he?
Oh, he did. He averaged, of the 3 running backs, his yards per carry was by almost an entire yard, the most on the team. He was 5.3 yards per carry. Tyree was 4.4, and Williams was 4.1. I'm not counting Book because he was 8. He had 8.5 per jog, right. And then Avery Davis had 1 run for 29. Even if you take out Davis, by the way, we're still over 200. Talk about balance for a team. Overall, 274 on the ground and 283 in the air, which is just fabulous. And then Book just distributing. 7 players caught a pass, and that doesn't include Tommy Tremble, which I do think is a little bit of a crime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Tremble has taken so much pride, and I think a lot of fans of the Irish have gone the same path in watching him be so focused on knocking people in the dirt for the lead blocking for the runners coming in behind him, and he's created a lot of massive collisions. Yeah, it really is. And, so they're not throwing to him as much because a lot of his plays have been consumed. A lot of his time's being consumed by just laying out who's ever in front of him on the defense. Really realistically, even Michael Mayer only had 1 catch. So they weren't really seeking out the tight ends in that game. And that's okay because it's not like they're not capable. And so we got a big W without needing that workload. And, there'll be times when, Meyer and Tremble have their shots as well. They're very capable of catching a ball and making a play.
So before we pop over to the next segment here. Let's talk about the defense a little bit. 7 tackles for loss, great, awesome. 2 for Heinisch. Love to see Pittsburgh boys get it. 1.5 for Crawford, 1 for Kaiser, half for White, half for Bauer. Riley Mills got in there. That's a true freshman out of the Midwest, big time recruit. Got a half of 1. Woos, Joker, Woo had a pass defended and no tackles. This is an anomaly and a stat line that I don't think you'll see until that man hangs up his jersey for good, which probably won't be for another, I don't know, 15, 17 years, something like that.
God's willing. Our other big star on defense, Hamilton, just had a couple of tackles, and there were a couple times he looked, I don't know, I won't use the term lost because I won't give myself enough credit to know what he should have been doing, but he obviously wasn't in as many plays as we typically see him in. And he unfortunately he did lose that interception because of a poor call.
Real quick, Dad, my guess is that he, just like the game against Clemson, my guess is that he was shadowing Zay Flowers again. I think he's shadowing the top receiver because Notre Dame's been playing. Clark Lee's MO is safe defense. And I'm not that shocked that we give up yards. Frankly, I was waiting for us to start giving up a ton of yards with Clark Lee as the defensive coordinator. So this makes more sense to me based on how we play, because we don't blitz, really. We blitz a little bit, and we get home when we do a lot of the time. But it's not based on blitzing,
Right.
And I figured that Hamilton would be a bracket player. And it looks, based on the stats, when I'm watching Notre Dame games, I watch nothing but the football because, I'm a child still.
Yeah, I think you may be right about that, AJ. And so, again, the defense was a little sloppy in the first period and a half. I think our DBs were struggling with that. And I think I would put Hamilton in that group. But, as the game wore on, everybody got settled in and started playing terrific defense. It was sure nice to see Jack Kaiser pick one off. He's just,
it was.
He's just one of the kind of players that Notre Dame has, that is a walk-on, if I remember correctly. And
no, Kaiser's not a walk-on.
Oh, he's not a walk-on? Okay.
He is not. Actually, to be honest, he was he was a late riser. He ended up in the top, roughly top 400, but he was very lightly recruited by other teams because he was seen as a lock to Notre Dame, for one, I think. And 2, he went to like the smallest high school that you can go to in Indiana.
Okay. Well, he played another, terrific game, making a couple of big plays when he was in there. So, what's nice about it, AJ, is you have the Joker, and we'll say Hamilton have maybe not their best of games, and the defense still put in a solid performance because all the laundry list of players who did a lot of work. And you have to give Sean Crawford a lot of kudos. 9 tackles leading the team. He had a sack. So that was his day to make a lot of plays. And as other days go on, you'll see that number switch. But I got to believe that Joker and Hamilton will be further up the ladder come the next game after the break.
Well, my only issue with the Hamilton, the aspect of Kyle Hamilton's contributions is that Hamilton, if we had more guys like Hamilton, we could use Hamilton could be Hamilton. He could use his gifts to show up on a stat sheet like this, but we need Hamilton. We need all of that stuff to protect us from much larger problems. And go ahead.
The one sneaky guy on our defense that I think is really good, and he helps the team on special teams and just lights a fire for everybody, is Bo Bauer. And he gets in there, and I don't know if his eyes just cross or he just what happens with him. But he just gets crazy on that field with his speed, his intensity, and again, getting called for that face mask was, just sad because, he put great pressure, on the QB. And then he also, he was all over the field on special teams. He's always the first guy down at kickoff, see if they don't, don't try to bring it back. So he's just done a terrific job. And one last note that I have is our punter never saw the field, which typically means you're doing pretty well. And I think a couple of those times where those 3 turnovers we lost probably lent a little bit of that. But but scoring 45 points means you've done something with 7 possessions that's pretty successful. So nice to have a game when your punter doesn't see any play time.
And for my final thought here, I think with what you just said, that what I take from that statement is that we won 45-31 with 3 fumbles lost. You take away those fumbles, what do we have? 52 to maybe. I'll give them 20. 52-20, and there's even greater disparity between these two teams, and that works to the optics and the college football playoff committee, which I don't know if this game is going to have any bearing on that. I would highly doubt it, but still, that those 3, this team, what that tells me is I really think this team is capable of beating anyone.
Yep, I agree.
Would I pick them to beat everyone? Yeah, you echo my thoughts exactly. Would I pick them to beat everyone? No. Would I pick them to beat? Would I pick them with the spread? Probably still not. But I do think they're capable of beating anybody if they play their game. I mean, that goes for everybody. But the ceiling of this team, I think, is the highest. And I'm not going to argue about the 2015 team with Jalen Smith and what would have happened if Brian Van Gorder wasn't there. Fact is, he was there. Okay, he was there. Yeah. He was the defensive coordinator. So this team overall, this program for this year, I'll say, has the highest ceiling.
I agree with you. I think the only challenge that we have, AJ, and it's like nitpicking, but we can't go over the top very well throwing the football. We can't go long very well at this stage.
Well, we can't burn. I had that same thought, but you know what? Seeing them finally utilize these guys the way that they need to be utilized, because they're all tall, they can go over the top. Now it'll be into coverage, and they're only going to win about 50% of those balls at best. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less. But that's still threatening the defense deep.
Obviously, last year we had that, and that's what happens when you graduate, kids, or they leave after the 3rd year. You just have a lot of changeover. But what this team would look like if you had a Chase Claypool as one of your wideouts as well. So that's if it wouldas and couldas. But I think this team brings a lot to the table, and it's exciting to see them teed up every week. By the way, I want to share with you.
I was prepared. Go on. What do you got?
AJ, I do want to share with you. We've increased our audience by 50% because my fearless cat, Britt, your actually fearless cat, is sitting about 2 feet away from me, falling asleep, which is probably, if people do it, it might be their choice of activities as well. But anyways, he's. I don't think he's going to be good for any commercials, though.
I was saying, I will credit them just to avoid any legal issues. Yeah. So, Dad, what I want to talk about now is Notre Dame recruiting and the state of the program. Okay, so we're reaching. It's within a month, less than a month away, is the early signing period, right? Which I think is mid-November-ish. So Notre Dame is currently, they just reshuffle, and I'm going to be referring a lot to 24/7 Sports. Love 24/7 Sports and what they do. according to 24/7 Sports, we have the 10th overall class right now. We have 21 commits, one being a kicker who we just flipped from Colorado. So on that note, we recently flipped the 7th overall kicker. Now, I went on another site showing that he is the #1 kicker in the country. He's a good kicker, is what I'm saying. I don't have anything else to say about kickers. He's a good kicker, and we have him now. We flipped him from Colorado, is the main point. Then we went ahead, and for the second time this cycle, we flipped back a decommitment. We got Philip Riley, 4-star cornerback out of Florida, to flip back from USC, which is a win-win, after decommitting from us. He decommitted, I think, less than a month ago. Notre Dame stayed on him and got him back 2 days ago, which is just huge. Last time we had 2 decommits come back, I believe, was Stephon Tuitt and Aaron Lynch.
Go Steelers.
go Steelers and wherever Aaron Lynch is, I guess. So
he unretired. I saw that he unretired. He came back to Atlanta, I think.
He could have been so good if he would have stuck around. But, you know, I don't know if there was necessarily any animosity there. So, yeah, I wish him well. And you know what? Even Phil, I wish Phil well.
Oh, absolutely.
I hope he does well. Hopefully he does tone back the vindictiveness that he has.
Yeah.
Because he was extra excited. And then when if I remember correctly, in some interviews they did with him pre and post, he said nothing about Notre Dame. He talked about the relationships with the players, which is intentionally leaving a few aspects of his South Bend experience out, like with the coaches or the program itself or the school. So whatever. All right. We have a pretty dang good class here. We're number 10. We have one player I want to talk about. His name's David Abiara. He is a defensive end from Texas, ranked number 348. He's a 4-star. Okay. He got in big trouble a month ago, I believe. Regardless of what the trouble is, a lot of the talk on the irishillustrated.com message boards via the folks on there and the moderators and staff members are saying he will not sign with Notre Dame, that he just will not sign. He's still listed as a commit. What I've heard, and this is what I've heard, let me be very clear about that. This is what I have heard, is that he did not inform the staff whenever he got in trouble, which may have changed the dynamic of what they'll do with him. So he's ranked number 348. Notre Dame went ahead and decided to pursue another option, who is ranked 102. He is defensive end out of Virginia, currently committed to Oklahoma. His name's Kelvin Gilliam. I like 102 much better than 348. I don't know about you, but that seems like a lower number.
Well, you know, especially when, as we've discussed in the past, your math skills are probably not your strongest of suits. I think you figured this out pretty well.
Yeah, I think there's like a multiple of 3 in there. I think he's maybe ranked 3 times more highly, more than 3 times.
Well, another way to put it is like 200 football players ahead of him.
Give or take, yeah, maybe almost 250. Anyway, Kelvin Gilliam is a really good player. He's 6'3", 250. Notre Dame Oklahoma's been recruiting him for at least a year. They've been recruiting him for a long time. Notre Dame offered him very recently, within the past couple months. I'm not going to lock down the timeline there. But this could be huge if Notre Dame can flip this kid. Notre Dame has flipped 2 kids, as far as I know, so far this season. And they are looking now at Kelvin Gilliam from Oklahoma, 102 overall, defensive end. They're also looking at flipping Caleb Johnson, who is, if I remember correctly, a Fort Wayne native living in Central Florida, going to Trinity Catholic. He's an offensive tackle. ranked 364 and is currently committed to Auburn. Now, on 24/7 Sports, they have a thing called the Crystal Ball, where staff members will put in predictions of where they think these players will sign eventually. And there have been just 3 or 4 that have rolled in for Caleb Johnson. So it looks like we may just add another offensive tackle here.
Well, we're going to need to line up, offensive linemen, because I think we're going to lose about 84 years of experience on our offensive line.
That we are.
Seems like, and so bringing some young lads in that can play that area on the field is going to really help us a lot. I think that there's, over the years, Notre Dame has demonstrated that not only can they have, All-Americans in the offensive line, they can get terrific pros. They become terrific pros when they get there as well. There's probably, half a dozen former Irish players that are all pro or Pro Bowl type players, and several of them that are maybe the next level down. So I think they've got a lot to sell in that particular area. I think the new area that they're going to be able to sell is the defensive players, like you were just talking about. We're getting some of these guys into the professional rank, but we're coming up with last couple of years now of tremendous defenses, each one getting better, and so I think that Kelly, Coach Kelly, can talk about how he's taken somebody who has joined the Irish and maybe wasn't certainly a 5-star, but has made him into somebody very desirable to play on Sundays. And he's got some linebackers in there now that look like they're going to play on Sundays. He sent a few to the league, to the league in the last couple of years. And I think it's just going to continue to get better and grow. We've got our man Stefan Tuitt for our Steelers, and who's putting in an all-pro year. So I think there's a lot that can happen. And the other thing is winning solves all problems. So
it does. It really does.
Yeah.
So I think, like you said, the offensive line, there is an attraction based. Let's take the program out of it, the lore and the tradition of Notre Dame out of it for just a second. And hypothetically, if you look at the position groupings, Notre Dame has a built-in attraction right now for tight ends and offensive linemen. Right. I think that with what Notre Dame is doing at the wide receiver position in the NFL, you'll soon see more wide receivers, which we have this season. In the past couple seasons, with Kevin Austin committing 2 years ago. Now, we haven't seen his delightful keister out on the field as much as we would like, but per all reports from the Notre Dame camp, that guy can ball, and is right now the best wide receiver on the team, even though he can't play. And at this point, that says a lot to me. It didn't a couple of weeks ago. At this point, that says a lot to me. They signed near 5-star wide receiver Jordan Johnson last year, which is huge for Notre Dame. This year, you've got Deion Colzie, big body, top 100. You've got speedster Lorenzo Styles out of Ohio, top 115. I think he's 114, something like that. And then you have Jaden Thomas, a possession guy, relative, like a well-built receiver, not super tall like Colzie, but he is a top 250 player out of Georgia. Again, love these. By the way, Colzie, also from Georgia. Love these Georgia kids. So to your point about the offensive line, this is where it gets kind of tricky. Everyone could come back. Now, you and I can agree that one person who is not coming back for any reason is Joker. We can say that almost for certain.
Right.
But these guys could come back. I will tell you this: if this was a regular season, we could lose Eichenberg, Hainsey, and Kramer. That's left tackle, right tackle, and right guard. We would lose them based on their eligibility. Obviously, that's not the case. Aaron Banks has one more year of eligibility left. He is, I believe, a redshirt senior. And then Jared Patterson, who, by the way, don't know if you heard about this, Jared Patterson, our starting center, is out for the season.
Yeah, you did tell me about that. And, that's, you're losing the quarterback of the offensive line. So it'll be interesting to see next man up and see how the communications go and see if there's any breakdown in, pass coverage and in run blocking.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I think they'll do okay. They've got a couple options here. Josh Lugg, who generally, by the way, a Wexford grad.
Oh yeah.
4-star player, massive human being. He's over 300 and he's 6'7", and he's taking snaps at center. I don't know how that exactly works, but he could be a 6'7" center. He's basically the next man in at all 5 positions.
Do you think
their
it's
sixth offensive line? Go ahead.
Do you think our guy, our man Book, is going to have even a little bit more problems seeing downfield with 6'7", 300 casting a shadow?
Tell him to get down.
Yeah, I think so.
Bend your knees, Josh. Bend your knees. So it could be Josh Lugg, who is the first off the bench utility man on the offensive line. Then there's also Zeke Correll. Okay, he is a redshirt freshman, top 100 player, and he is a true center. He's almost 300 pounds. I think he's about 6'3" ish. He's not pushing 6'4", but he is over 6'3" is what he's at least listed as where I've seen. Good player. He's another option. And then there is walk-on turned scholarship player Colin. You should recognize this last name, Colin Grunhard. His dad played, I believe he was an offensive lineman for the last championship team.
Oh, the 88 team.
I remember. Yeah, if I remember correctly. And that might be way off. He's a legacy, and he earned a scholarship on the team. So he's another one that may factor in there. I would highly doubt he sees the field. So it's basically between Lugg and Correll. They're also talking about maybe moving Hainsey to center because he came to Notre Dame as a center before bumping out to right tackle. So they have some options there.
Yeah.
Now, Dad, I'm gonna run down before we wrap up here. I'm gonna run down our top players here and get your thoughts on the numbers and the optics of how these guys are rated and their positions and what you think is gonna be who's gonna have a high impact and who's not based on their position and where they're ranked. So I'm gonna give you the top. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm gonna give you top 6. All right. So Blake Fisher, offensive tackle, number 49 overall. I think I'll let you take that one based on what you know about the roster and such.
Well, first off, there's a chance we're going to be looking for a tackle, and so I know that there's some flexibility with these young men coming in that they can take other positions, but let's face it, if Ian Book comes back next year or we have a younger quarterback, taking over the reins, you're going to need some help, on the outside. And, the tackles are going to give it to him. So whether he plays left tackle or right tackle, to have a highly rated player like this is great in one of the tackle positions. So yeah.
I'll tell you this, Dad, he is the quarterback of this class. He's the one that that reaches out to all the recruits. He is our top unpaid recruiter. Let me put it this way. Also, he's from Avon, and he is not only 6'5.5", he's 336 pounds, and he's 17 years old. This kid is going to be massive. So, my thought with him, and then go ahead.
Well, I think once they get him in camp too, AJ, he's big. I'm sure he's strong and that kind of stuff, but they'll put the right kind of muscle on him as well. So
I've heard that he's actually pretty well built, but I do think they'll change that marbling around a little bit.
Yeah,
So,
I think so.
on that same vein, there's an offensive guard, big kid, Mark Spindler's kid. He was an NFL player for some years. His son Rocco is an offensive guard, 6'4.5", 315, 59 overall offensive guard out of Michigan, which is a huge coup, bringing him out of that state and into the fold in South Bend. So along the same lines as Fisher. Yeah, we do need these guys. These guys are probably not going to see the field as freshmen because we've recruited the what out of the offensive line. So those guys, I'm looking forward to them. Probably not going to see them next year. All right.
Well, it's nice.
So
I think the name. Well, I think the name Rocco, I think, just belongs at Notre Dame.
I completely agree. He's my favorite name in the class so far. Actually, to that point, the wide receivers have decent. There's one guy that has. I just love Styles as the last name. So, in the top 6 players is included Dion Colsey, the commit, decommit, and recommit, 84th overall player, wide receiver out of Athens, Georgia. By the way, Athens, Georgia, in the backyard, and we took them. So he's 6'4", 193, and then there's 6'1", 185 Lorenzo Styles Jr. out of Pickerington, Ohio, 112th overall, and he is a speedster. So your thoughts?
Well, I think we definitely need some help there. The class, not the class, but the group we have out there right now is making it work. I think we've talked about this maybe ad nauseum that we need some help there. And so these young lads coming in with that kind of talent, size as one guy, speed as the other guy, I think that's terrific. If we can get Austin to stay on the field, and if we get Zero back from pulling, I think it's a second hamstring pull, if I remember correctly,
he's
to
hurt
get him back on the field. Yeah. I think look, if that's what your body makeup is, we may not be able to depend on him. So, bringing in some additional talent there is going to help. And, we've had some freshmen contribute at the wide out spot, and we can do that again if they bring the right package to the table. And I don't think that Kelly's afraid to put him on the field. May not be a starter, but is certainly not afraid of blending him in.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think that it is hard to get on the field as a wide receiver because that position is so nuanced, which is weird. It's weird to think of that position as nuanced because you see all these players in the NFL who don't seem like they would grasp any nuance whatsoever.
Right.
A lot of these guys who just they seem like they would be enthralled by pretty colors and flashing lights,
Well, the other problem you have too, along those lines is, first off, are we going to have spring football? And if we're going to have spring football, are these two players going to come in for that? And there's so many variables as far as that's concerned.
There are a lot of variables. They are both coming in. They are both enrolling early, though, by the way. Actually, no.
That's good.
No, Styles is enrolling early. Excuse me. We have a ton of kids enrolling early, Dad, by the way.
Good.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of 21 right now, which is huge. Yeah. And 5 of the top, 4 of the top 5. Excuse me. 7 of the top 8 will be enrolling early, which is just amazing for the coaches.
What is this devastating, COVID challenge that we're dealing with? It broke right when spring football was supposed to start. And so I'm not sure anything really transpired at that point in time because it was utter chaos. And I think we know more and understand more. So, at least there can be some sort of guidelines which, these players can get some exposure without, even if they don't have to put pads on, at least, they'll know how to, the protocols to take to be able to get them to learn, to get that advantage of that extra semester.
So we have McKinley and Skoranek, who in a traditional season would be leaving. I don't know if they will be, to be honest. I don't know what their prospects in the NFL. I don't imagine that they're super, super great. So those guys might come back for a minute. If we put them to the side and say, yes, they're leaving, that leaves us with contributors. Avery Davis, Jafar Armstrong, who's now going to take some snaps at wideout, which I'm very excited about. Kevin Austin, Lawrence Keys, Braden Lenzy, and Joe Wilkins, who's done pretty well. And those are the guys that have contributed a little bit this year. Kevin Austin, not so much. But then the freshmen this year who haven't played at all. There's Xavier Watts, who is a big play waiting to happen. Jay Brunell, who had fantastic measurables and played extremely well I think he's a Northeastern kid, if I remember correctly. And then there's near 5-star Jordan Johnson. So we have some big time talent back there. I still think that Colsey and Styles could come in and make a dent and get some playing time. So last two here, I'm going to go through this one real quick. Gabriel Rubio out of St. Peter's, which is right next to where Uncle Timmy lives, by the way, in Missouri.
Yep.
He is a defensive tackle at 6'5.5", 290, 114th overall. I just love having tall dudes in the middle of the line.
Yep, that sounds like a sturdy lad. And, is this the same Uncle Tim that you shamed with a certain photograph from the '88 championship game?
He deserved it. You did too, but he deserved it more.
Well, I deserve, yes, no question. But, you did just slam him.
I felt really good about it. I'm still mad, though, that you guys didn't appreciate the Masters update to the tune of Waka Flocka Flames Hard in the Paint. Shout out Grind City Media. That was brilliant. You may never hear this, but you deserve to know that was brilliant content. Thank you so much for that. If you didn't stick around for it, I don't know if you heard the part where they were talking about the one guy who did not make it on the leaderboard, and then they started chanting "bogey party." It's a bogey party.
No, I lasted even half the time that Tim lasted. So
yeah, you guys are the worst.
Yeah, well, it's a generational laugh, I think.
Oh, you guys are just the worst. So let's finish it up here with Tyler Buckner. You should know this name. He is the 55th overall player in the country, the third-ranked dual-threat quarterback out of La Mesa, California, Tyler Buckner. So let's say Ian Book leaves. We've got Brendan Clark. We've got Drew Pine. And we've got Tyler Buckner. I don't think there's any way that Tyler Buckner starts a game next year. What are your thoughts real quick?
Well, I'm not so sure that Ian's going anywhere. He's got to play another year to give any chance at all to go to the next level. I think, you look back 5 years and Kaiser really made a bad move by leaving Notre Dame and fizzled. Now, Kaiser had a lot more physical skills than Ian has. So I think because Ian, obviously loves the game of football, loves playing Notre Dame, loves being the quarterback at Notre Dame. I don't see him bypassing another opportunity to quarterback the team.
So what I'm hearing, though, Dad, is that he will not be back. And there's nothing substantial about that, but a lot of the staff members on irishillustrated.com are sort of hinting that they don't believe he will be back. And there's a lot of folks on there that concur with that sentiment. I think he comes back because what else?
That's right.
I would absolutely, I can't believe I'm saying this. I wouldn't have said this a couple of weeks ago. I would love to have him back. I think he's hitting his stride again. I think he hit his stride. He came out big in the end of 2017, and then the beginning of 2018 when he took over Brandon Wimbush. And now I think he's reinvigorated in the same way he was at that time. And I think that confidence is just oozing out of him. And I think the sky is the limit for him at this point. And I think he will reach at Notre Dame the best that he can possibly be. if he
Well,
sticks around.
if they could feed him and water him and put a sun lamp on him, maybe you can get a couple more inches, on his height. We can only hope. And then, if you have
Little
one
miracle
other
grow.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little miracle grow. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And then I think the other thing is that arm's got to get a little bit stronger.
Yeah, I don't know if you should really mess with that at this point. Maybe do the normal quarterback things to keep an arm strong. The various strength training activities you can do outside of just practicing at different arm angles and different lengths on the field, which they're going to do for any quarterback. I don't know if you really attack that arm. I think where he's at, the fact that he makes work what he has, and I don't even want to disparage it by saying that, because I think the most underrated thing any Notre Dame player has had, well, I'll keep it here. Any Notre Dame quarterback, the most underrated aspect of any Notre Dame quarterback that I've seen in my life is Ian Book's ability to run the ball, which, I mean, is it underrated? Because he's got 364 yards on the ground, 4.9 per carry, 6 touchdowns. I mean, what else do you want? The guy has accounted for, at this point, over 2,000 yards of total offense on the season and 17 touchdowns total with 1 interception, maybe a handful of fumbles. That's okay.
Well, he is the other part about his game is when he does break out and run, it seems like at very critical junctures in the game or a drive. So
yeah, and I to your point there, Dad, I think that I really hope that he stays underrated, because I think that's part of what contributes to that running ability, is because they look at him and for some reason teams refuse to take him seriously on the ground. I'm waiting for a spy. I'm waiting to see someone spy him religiously. Now, it's been done, but I'm waiting for someone to put a good player on him and just watch him for 60 minutes.
Obviously, that provides us with a bit of an opportunity out, downfield a little bit too. So, you don't get it for free. If you're going to cover him with a spy, and how many times you take off? 7, 8, 9 times in a game, but you got that spy on there for 42 plays and 42 snaps. You're tying him up a little bit, on every play. He's not running a football, and that's okay. That's another dimension he adds as far as putting pressure on the defense. So, yeah, I'd like to see him stay another year. And again, you and I look at it without having the inside information some of these guys that you're talking about probably have. But it just as a fan and a lover of Notre Dame football, and certainly we both watch our fair share of pro football, yay Steelers, and that just seems to be a guy who loves playing sports and loves his game, and I don't see him going to that level. I'm not sure he gets drafted, and boy, I don't know, and I just don't know how you walk away from Saturdays if you don't have a lock on Sundays.
Yeah, I agree with that, and like you said, I would just absolutely love to see that man come back and lead the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, because by all accounts, he's a fabulous human being, and I'm very proud to have him as Notre Dame's quarterback, because the great thing about watching his game is that part of his game is you can visibly see, and that's what happens with running quarterbacks and passing quarterbacks to a degree, and I'll explain that. You can see that he is trying his what's off, because he's, especially in the Clemson game, I would have liked. That's a lie. I would like to call myself a football purist and say, or a learned football viewer, and say, the quarterback needs to get down. No. Let him go. Head first. Do whatever you need to get the first down for Ian Book's sake. Get the first down. I'm not I loved seeing him do that against Clemson. You could tell that he's trying his what's off. And the same thing with standing in the pocket. You can see a primary a quarterback who gets it done primarily as a passer and very, very little as a runner, who stands in the pocket and gets nailed while still throwing the pass. It's not only that, but stepping into it. It's always so clear that he is giving 110 out there.
Yep, he is. And his football IQ is pretty special.
I think it's getting better, to be honest.
Yep.
I think it was always good, but the fact that now he seems to have settled down a bit.
Yeah. Can you work on your IQ?
Nope. It is what it is. I'm not comfortable with it, but I get by. So thanks for listening to this bonus edition of the Shall We Football podcast, because when the question is, shall we football, the answer is always yes.
Yes.
Thanks for being here, Dad, and good night, everyone.
Good night, all.